Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Project Power on Netflix. Let's talk about it. So Project Power is directed by Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman. And going into this film, if I'm being quite honest, I would have to say that I wasn't the most excited. When I saw the trailer, I thought it was pretty run-of-the-mill Netflix fare. I didn't find it to be particularly spectacular or out of the ordinary for Netflix. It just kind of felt like your average B-movie type blockbuster. And having seen the film itself, I would say that I was pretty much right. I was pretty much right in my initial assessment, although we will get into some of the parts of the film that I did very much enjoy. But for the most part, I just found it to be quite average. But the reason why I'm doing this review is because it has been so long since I've even been able to film. The UK went through this crazy period of a heat wave that just, it was insufferable. It was insane. And I had been planning on filming my 5 things that I want to see from the Umbrella Academy season 3 video, which I wish I had just filmed when I did my season 2 review, but I didn't. Unfortunately, we were hit with the heat wave shortly afterwards, so I wasn't able to get that video up. I'll probably be filming that video once the trailer for season 3 of the Umbrella Academy comes out, so we can talk about the things that I really want to see from season 3, whilst also looking at the trailer itself whenever it comes out, probably next year. But in the meantime, we're going to be reviewing this rather average, run-of-the-mill Netflix movie. I'm going to start off with some of the negative points that I have about this film, and then hopefully end it on a bit more of a positive note and talk about the things that I really did enjoy. Now, the main issue when it comes to this film for me is that the plot itself isn't that spectacular. It's not particularly unique. It's something that we have seen time and time again. Now, there are some more unique elements to this plot, which we'll get into later on, but for the most part, we have yet another genetically altered soldier, and he's out for revenge because his daughter has been kidnapped, and he will do whatever it takes to get her to safety. And we've seen this so many times before that honestly it's getting a bit frustrating. It's definitely getting boring and unremarkable. So when it comes to this film, I feel like its reliance on this type of storyline was definitely at its detriment, because it made it feel like just any other action film that we've seen in the last 10 years. Now, even though I found the basics of this storyline to be rather repetitive and something that we've definitely seen before time and time again, I do think there was an opportunity here to produce these really cool, memorable characters that would kind of offset that and that would kind of elevate the material. And so cue in Jamie Foxx, Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Dominique Fishback. I did think they had good chemistry, just bouncing off of one another, and I think they did a good job of driving the story forward. But despite the good chemistry that the actors had with one another, I just don't think that their characters were very well developed. I don't think that we had enough information about Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character. I believe his name is Frank. You know, we don't really get to find out why it is that he is so determined to protect his city. I mean, it's kind of just taken for granted that he loves New Orleans and he would protect it at all costs, but we don't really know much about his character at all. And then we have the character of Art, I believe his name is. Listen, Jamie Foxx's Art. We're given a few crumbs as to his backstory as well, and like I said, it's something that we have seen time and time again. And so because his background is so reminiscent of other characters, other memorable characters that we have seen in films for the last 10 years, it's very difficult to find any distinguishing characteristics within Jamie Foxx's performance here, because his character just doesn't have the material. He just doesn't have the stuff to make him stand out in this crowd. I thought it was great to see a story that centers on a young black female lead. That was definitely a positive when it came to this film. I wish she was surrounded by something more interesting and something more innovative, but in terms of having her as a lead for this film, I think there was definitely potential that I saw in her, and I think she did a great job of bouncing off of these incredibly, you know, well-renowned actors. So good job to her. I think she definitely gave it her all, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds for her. And closely related to the development of the characters themselves, I will also say that I wasn't a big fan of how they developed the relationship between Frank and Art. I thought it was incredibly rushed. Incredibly rushed. By the end of the film, they had us believing that Frank was willing to sacrifice himself in order to help Art out. And I'm like, how? Why? Where? How did this happen? Like, they just snap and all of a sudden they're no longer antagonists but rather allies, and it's just such a quick decision that they made, and it's not something that they really built up, and it's not something that really felt convincing and natural, and as a result their relationship felt very weak. So even though we do see, you know, Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt acting against each other, and I think it's great, again, they have that on-screen chemistry, when it comes to the actual script itself and how they become allies as opposed to antagonists, it's like whiplash. It gave me whiplash. That's how fast they all of a sudden became friends, and it was quite unconvincing. And finally, another issue that I had with this film is that they definitely touched on different genres within this single film, which I think some worked better than others. There were definitely elements, you know, of sci-fi, obviously due to the premise, and then we also had action elements in there which were carried out very well, which we'll get into later on. But in terms of these sprinklings of comedy and the sprinklings of like a buddy cop movie that they inserted in there, like I said, I already wasn't wholly convinced by Frank and Art's friendship by the end of this film. But then you also have the insertion of these comedic elements which I thought were very weak as well. So just that aspect of the film felt very fragmented because you had so many different genres in there and not all of them were done justice. The comedy wasn't that great, it wasn't that substantial, it was just, maybe you got a bit of a chuckle out of me because Joseph Gordon-Levitt is already just naturally charming and charismatic. So when I saw him coming out of Robin's mum's bathroom in the tower, I was like, oh, like that's hilarious, that's funny because it's him. As opposed to me praising the script for its comedic chops specifically, I was more looking at the delivery of the actors. Now let's get on to some of the positives of this film, because even though I did find it to be rather run-of-the-mill, nothing spectacular, nothing special, I did still have a fun time with it. I did still very much enjoy Project Power, and the main reason is because of that very interesting and exciting premise of having this pill that gives you powers and unknown powers to you unless you've taken it before for 5 minutes. The 5 minutes aspect of that premise definitely gives it a sense of urgency. Whenever any of these characters are taking the pill, you know that the countdown has started. So I definitely think the added element of having this pill that gives you any power, you don't know what your power is, again, unless you've taken it before, for 5 minutes is something that really drives the story forward and adds to that excitement factor, because the possibilities are endless here. You can have so many different powers that can manifest from different people, and of course they even mentioned how they used animals in nature and the natural powers that they have in order to kind of synthesize that and turn it into this pill that would manifest powers in humans in a similar way. Listen, sci-fi is not my gig. I don't know how that makes sense, but whatever. And closely related to that, in a very X-Men Days of Future Past way, we also had Art's daughter, who was the source of these mutations, I guess. She was the one who was kind of manifesting these powers because she was naturally born with those powers as a result of Jamie Foxx's character having been genetically altered and blah blah blah. I found it to be very interesting how they drew the comparisons between the way that she was treated by this evil organization versus the real life African American woman who has been the source of so much knowledge, so much information when it comes to biochemistry, and in reality her cells were donated involuntarily. They were taken from her by the scientific community to be studied when she was just in an operating room to deal with the cancer that she had. They decided to just take more, and I think it was a very good comparison that they had there. It's something that added a few more layers to the story, and it's something that I definitely noted, and it made me do some research on the real life woman that is the basis of so much that we know in cell biology today. And just in general, like I already said, I was very happy to see a young black woman, a young black female being a lead in this film. This is yet another entry into the superhero genre that is this close to becoming oversaturated. But I do have to say that whilst this trend will probably run out, it will probably run its course in a few years, I'm really excited to see how, as more and more films in this genre come out, we're starting to see more diverse casts, we're starting to see more diverse story arcs and storylines and characters, and I think it's really exciting to see more and more black people participating in this wave of superhero movies in a way that they weren't able to when musicals were a thing back in the 50s, or westerns were a thing back in the 60s and 70s. Another plus of this film is definitely the action sequences, and in particular the use of CGI. Now there definitely needed to be some sort of use of CGI in order to manifest those powers effectively effectively on screen. And I have to say, they really hit the nail on the head when it came to the CG, because it looked very convincing as the powers that are being portrayed on screen could ever look. Okay, so I had intended on ending this review on a positive note, as I said before, but I just remembered that I didn't mention the villains. And that's mostly because they're forgettable. They're forgettable, they're insignificant, they're irrelevant. I don't know what to tell you. It's yet another evil corporation who wants to commodify superpowers and is brutalizing and using and abusing someone in order to do so. We've seen it time and time again, so it just doesn't really stand out to me, just like the backstory of Jamie Foxx's character doesn't. And then you also have the added element of Courtney B. Vance's character. He's the captain of the New Orleans police force. And by the way, shout out to New Orleans. I think it was really nice to have another city be highlighted instead of the regular old like New York that we usually get. This film could have easily been set in New York, so I'm glad to see another city be highlighted, even though we didn't really get a chance to see the city in its entirety and to really absorb the culture of New Orleans. And I think it definitely would have helped to make Frank's character's love of his city just feel more real and more relatable, because we can understand that he loves his city, but if we don't really get a chance to see it, especially as an outsider, we don't really absorb that, we don't really believe it as much. But anyway, my point was that Courtney B. Vance's character is a crooked cop. I mean, what's new? And again, it's just something that we've seen time and time again. Although I promise I wanted to end this review on a positive note. So the fact that we have Courtney B. Vance, that's a positive. So overall, I would say that this film was enjoyable, just not spectacular or anything of note. It definitely won't be one of the best films of 2020 for me, although maybe it will, and that would be really disappointing. This year. And with all of that said, I'm going to be giving Project Power a 6 out of 10. So that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Project Power, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this film down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to my channel. I recently hit 400 subscribers and I appreciate each and every one of you who have subscribed and who comment and like my videos and watch my videos. It's just amazing to see so many of you guys interacting with me and my channel, and I really appreciate it. So welcome to this little corner of the internet. I hope you enjoy my videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.